Chapter 6. In the portal of Karl's common room, the commander of the 5 Collinsburg soldiers made a sweeping gesture. In response, his men advanced on Moonbear. Crouched in expectation, the barbarian retreated, eyes locked on the pinched hands beneath the guard's red cuffs. Suddenly wordless and solemn, Karl slipped back behind his bar, studying the guardsmen and their quarry in a guttering swirl of candlelight. The remaining Wynethians straggled to the relative safety of the room's center. Recalling the doorway into Karl's kitchen which led outside, Tazir edged around the bar with deliberate slowness designed to mask his movement. His heart raced. Memories of guards' torture sent waves of pain through his limbs. The urge to slip away became an all-consuming passion. Apparently they want Moonbear. I'm no help to him in a fight. No need for both of us to die. The guards clustered in on Moonbear in a tight formation. The 2 in front kept their weapons sheathed. Behind them, their 3 companions clutched swords, angling to block Moonbear's escape. The commander hung back. He called an order, and his men stopped, a grim black semicircle of threat. Moonbear continued his steady backward motion until his heel touched the wall. He remained there, poised and restless as a coiled spring. The commander addressed Moonbear. "Be still, barbarian. We've no wish to harm you. You can't stand against all of us." Moonbear's calm naivete disappeared. His brows bunched into a defiant glare. His sing-song accent added a mocking quality to his reply. "I shall not be caged again. Many of your men will fall before me. The survivors can drag my corpse back to your baron." Moonbear's bold oratory wrung shame through Tazir. He stopped his slow, careful retreat. A sense of loyalty warred with his instincts to escape, igniting an ancient memory of his father's words. The only true sin is cowardice, that limitless fear which allows a man to forsake his fellows in combat. Tazir swallowed as the guard shuffled forward. I still owe Moonbear my life. Abandoning him now would make me as contemptible as Illyrian. Aware that his presence in battle would only hamper Moonbear, Tazir fingered his dagger, hoping for an opportunity when his intervention might tip the odds toward Moonbear. The guards closed. With the caution of lion trainers, the unarmed soldiers reached for Moonbear's arms. Without warning, Moonbear kicked. The side of his foot smashed into a guardsman's knee. The crack of impact shattered the silence. The injured man screamed and crumpled to the floor. Moonbear continued his motion. His fist crashed against the other guard's head. The man staggered. Moonbear seized the dazed guardsman by an arm and whisked him inward. The barbarian gripped the man like a shield. The swordsmen hesitated. Their commander shouted from his position beyond the battle. Moonbear stepped forward. He hurled the stunned guard toward the naked sword of one of his fellows. The blade caught the unarmed guard in the stomach and ran him through. The wielder cried out in surprise. Momentum toppled man and corpse to the hard stone floor, and Moonbear whirled to face his last 2 assailants. The splash of blood recalled the memory of Tazir's mother's death. Nausea slid through his gut. The crafted hilt of his dagger bit into his palm. One of the 2 remaining soldiers rushed Moonbear. His sword cut gleaming arcs through the air. Though unarmed, Moonbear held his ground. Tazir freed his dagger, hoping a well-aimed throw could stop the guard's strike before it landed. Abruptly, Moonbear lashed out with his arm. The back of his wrist beat the flat of the swordsman's blade, knocking it aside. The guard's momentum carried him off balance. A blow from Moonbear's fist knocked the man sprawling. Moonbear wrenched the sword from the soldier's hand. Flicking the blade into an offensive position, the barbarian bore down on his last opponent. The commander uttered a curse. His remaining charge crouched, understandably wary. With slow back steps, he drew Moonbear forward, buying time for his dazed and injured companions to rejoin the fight. Tazir growled a silent oath, aware Moonbear's battle was again about to become many against one. Time seemed to slow. Seconds spanned eternity. A candle on the counter fizzled to a trail of smoke. Tazir glanced toward the commander and noticed, with alarm, that the man was returning his gaze. Steel shined from Moonbear's direction, and Tazir suddenly became aware of his own peril. The commander started around Karl's bar. Still clutching his knife, Tazir bolted for the kitchen. The hearth fire had dwindled to a dappled pattern of spent coals and faintly glowing orange bricks. Shadows splashed the painted white of the outer door. Tazir sprinted for it. Behind, he heard the pursuing slap of the commander's boots. A gruff voice screamed his name like an order. Tazir. Tazir reached the door. He curled his fingers around its latch, cursing the seconds its opening cost him. Pulling the panel inward, he sprang for the yard, but as he moved, one of the commander's hands whipped over Tazir's shoulder and closed on his chin, dragging the maneuver short. Fingers gouged Tazir's face. He surged forward, attempting to tear free. The soldier's grip held. He wrenched Tazir backward. Tazir slipped, twisting as he fell. The dagger jarred from his fist and spun, flickering into darkness. He landed on his side. A kick from the commander sprawled Tazir supine. He tensed to rise. The commander's sword hissed from its sheath, and he placed the blade at Tazir's throat. "Be still, Madakan thief. My orders read to bring the barbarian alive. You." His voice went dry with contempt. "You I can carve into steaks if I wish." Tazir's mind raced. Moonbear's battles sounded heated. Surely some time would pass before the barbarian could tend to anything but his own defense. Tazir's gaze swept every quarter of the room. Barely within reach of his left hand, his dagger lay beneath Karl's blood-spattered butchering table. "Steaks," Tazir said, hoping to distract the guard with idle conversation from the steady inching of his fingers toward the knife. "Has Kallenberg's baron turned cannibal?" The commander sneered. "Who said anything about people eating you? These woods have foxes, bears, and feral lions, who would love fresh thief meat, even for one so small and bony." Tazir's hand snaked toward the dagger, though he was intensely aware of the constant pressure of steel at his neck. "Kill me then, soldier, but the baron will never know why I stole Garen's chalice, nor the names of my accomplices." His fingers touched the sharpened edge of the knife blade. Suddenly the guard shifted. His foot came down hard on Tazir's groping fingers. With the toe of his other boot, he back-kicked the dagger across the room. "Nice try, weasel," he hissed. "Now I can't risk bringing you in alive." He raised his sword, his lips twisted in a grimace of contempt. "Wait!" screamed Tazir, trying to stall. The crash of steel in the common room seemed distant and unreal. His head ached, filled with images. His mother, condemned by the name of her accused husband, pleading for understanding from neighbors who'd once served as friends. His father's eyes demanding vengeance. Moonbear asking nothing yet deserving a fierce loyalty Tazir had no power to provide. Burdened by promises, Tazir dared not believe he would shed his last blood like a butchered hog on a kitchen floor. The commander's sword carved downward, colored fire red by the last remnants of hearthlight. A sudden slap resounded through the room. The commander crumpled. His sword struck the floor with a ring of sound. Shocked, Tazir lurched to his feet and confronted Karl's weathered features. The tavern master clutched a huge wooden baking paddle, streaked with guard's blood. "Karl?" Tazir shook his head, wondering if he might become the ex-warrior's next target. "Why?" Weak shards of moonlight from the open door etched Karl's harried-looking face into a mass of wrinkles. "Your name? You're Captain Tazir Madakan's son?" Accustomed to jeers since the malicious gossip and lies which had accompanied his father's death, Tazir nodded carefully. Karl lowered his makeshift weapon. "No resemblance, but your voice is the same, and you have your father's damnable courage." Tazir flushed scarlet, feeling guilty, undeserving of Karl's praise. Karl inclined his head toward the door, and tangled black and gray hair fell across his cheek. "I owed Taz my life many times. Now my debt is paid. Please, go now." Tazir required no prodding. Suppressing the urge to waste time thanking Karl, he scrambled from the kitchen into the semi-darkness of a thieves' moon. Grasses prickled between the bindings of his sandals. Night air chilled through his drying tunic. Wind rattled against the hulking shadow of the emptied beer wagon. Concerned for Moonbear, yet bound by Karl's request, Tazir did not re-enter the common room but crossed to its front. There he discovered half a dozen of Kallenberg's striped zebra steeds, bridle-tied to the copper handrails. He freed them all. Catching the reins of two, he waited, alone save for the crisp chorus of insects in the village square. Suddenly, Moonbear's mountainous figure appeared in Karl's doorway, clutching a sword in each fist. Transferring both sets of reins to the same hand, Tazir waved urgently. Familiar with Kallenberg and its soldiers, he knew scant time would pass before these six were missed and sought. Moonbear shuffled toward Tazir through the darkness. Impatiently, Tazir waited until his companion reached the last stair. "Here!" He tossed one pair of narrow leather reins and let his own mount into the roadway. Moonbear made no effort to catch the reins. They swung in a short arc, slapping the horse's black-barred neck. The beast snorted and pranced sideways, twisting its head toward Moonbear contemptuously. Tazir caught the flapping reins. He slapped them into Moonbear's thick hand. "Get on!" Moonbear stared from the braided leather in his fist to the striped steed. Suddenly, he raised his head. Many horses approaching from the south. Tizir swore. The men Moonbear fought must have been the gate guards sent only to detain us until the army could mobilize. But why send so many after so few? Devoid of a logical answer, Tizir turned his attention to escape. Flipping the reins to their correct position on the horse's neck, he vaulted to its back. Moonbear just stood there, still studying his zebra steed. Now Tizir, too, heard the pounding hoofbeats of the pursuing army. "A Garen's blood, Moonbear, have you gone daft? Mount up!" Tizir reined in his steed, fearing Moonbear might have sustained a skull injury in the battle. The hoofbeats grew louder. Moonbear dove. He came down heavily on his stomach across the horse's withers. Breath rushed from him. Tizir cringed in sympathy as Moonbear scrambled into place with an uncharacteristic awkwardness. Waiting only until Moonbear wound a hand in the beast's smoky mane, Tizir kicked his own horse into a gallop. From habit, Moonbear's mount followed. At Tizir's prompting, the zebra steeds charged down the wet ribbon of roadway. Their hooves chewed into the surface, flinging mud balls in their wake. Tizir hunkered flat to his horse's neck, avoiding the resistance of the wind and falling comfortably into the swaying rhythm of the run. From behind came a long string of speech in a northern tongue. Moonbear sounded distressed. Sitting upright, Tizir pressed both reins to one hand and swiveled to face Moonbear. The barbarian's knuckles were blanched white. The horse's mane striped his fingers like ink. Each galloping step hurled him up from his seat. Overcompensating, Moonbear would try to gain his position, only to slide across the opposite flank. Tizir loosed his reins and gave his horse its head, fascinated by Moonbear's antics. The barbarian seemed as clumsy as a toddler learning to dance. The looming darkness of the guy-walled forest on either side seemed to crush in on Tizir and Moonbear. The thieves' moon limited vision to finger-breadths of roadway. Moonbear's horse sidled to avoid a puddle. With a sharp cry of surprise, Moonbear tumbled. He crashed to the ground and rolled, a handful of mane still clenched in his fist. The zebra steed raced onward. Tizir reined in his mount. Its hoofs skidded through the soft muck, then slowed to a walk. Tizir drew in a tight circle back to Moonbear. The barbarian scrambled to his feet as dirt covered as an ancient statue. His hair hung in brown clumps. Concern overcame Tizir's urge to laugh. "Are you hurt?" Without returning Tizir's gaze, Moonbear shook his head. "Hoofbeats in both directions. Into the woods, quickly." Moonbear disappeared between the trunks. Tizir hesitated, reluctant to sacrifice the horse's speed. "As if it will do me much good when I'm trapped between two guard forces and executed for thievery." Tizir dismounted. Catching the bridle, he directed his steed northward. A slap on his rump, followed by a wild waving of Tizir's arms, sent the beast skittering after its fellow. Moonbear reappeared, peering out from the woods. "Follow me closely." Tizir nodded. Knowing that on his own he could not negotiate the woodlands with the necessary speed, he wound his hands in Moonbear's cloak and pressed his head against the barbarian's back. The damp, muddy folds of cloth smothered his reply. "Go." Like wind rustling through the treetops, Moonbear entered the tangle of trees and vines. Betraying none of the ineptness he showed on horseback, he threaded through the brush with the agility of a forest animal. Though feeling uncomfortably close to Moonbear, Tizir hung on tenaciously, devoting his attention to the placement of his own sandaled feet. With each step, he vowed to learn to traverse the forest with Moonbear's animal stealth. After a time, the darkness and Moonbear's constant jog became familiar to Tizir. Still weak from his recent experiences, he trailed Moonbear like a man in a dream. Hours passed in a cold haze. Then Moonbear's pace slowed to a walk. He plowed through a copse of fir beneath a web of oak boughs which obscured the sky. Crouching beside a sheltering deadfall, Moonbear spoke. "We sleep now." Tizir dropped to the ground beside Moonbear. He yawned. His eyelids felt weighted and his limbs unusually heavy. No argument. He curled into a ball. Fallen branches gouged through his tunic and into flesh. Cursing, he cleared a spot on the forest floor and sprawled across it. Tizir squeezed his eyes shut, craving sleep yet hyper-alert. He could feel his heart beating, rapid and thready. Tizir rolled to his side, seeking the most comfortable position. Thought crowded in, replaying the events of the previous day, the pervading stench of Cullensburg's sewage, the commander's sword raised for its killing strike, lives spilled like water in Winnett's common room. His uneasiness intensified. Sleep hovered, a distant compulsion. A noise broke the stillness, a series of whirring barks. Tizir leaped to a crouch, heart pounding. An answering chorus sounded from nearby. "What's that?" he whispered. Moonbear snickered. Foxes bickering over territory. They are no danger to us. Go to sleep. Tazir lay down, certain every normal woodland sound would startle him awake. I wish I could. Moonbear rolled toward Tazir. What's wrong? Tazir shook his head. Strange place, and too many things to think about, he sighed. Moonbear, why is the Baron willing to empty his treasury to get you back in his dungeon? He met Moonbear's gray-eyed stare, expecting a noncommittal answer. He knows my people will pay with gold for my safe return. Surprised by the directness of Moonbear's explanation, Tazir sat. More than 5,000 weight? Moonbear shrugged. Whatever he asks. Our fathers have blessed our rivers with enough of the yellow metal to meet our needs. Conquests have gleaned still larger amounts. We use it to consecrate tombs, but we've plenty extra. Moonbear leaned on one elbow, propping his head on his palm. My people care more for my life than my Dakara's grav. He struggled to define the foreign concept. My grave gold. Tazir gnawed at a thumb callus, envisioning streams clotted with melted gold. So all of your people have a death fund which can become ransom? Moonbear considered Tazir's odd word choice briefly. No, not all. Only royalty. Only royalty. Slowed by exhaustion, Tazir took several seconds to make the obvious connection. Your royalty? Yawning, Moonbear nodded. I am the prince. The heavy burden of fatigue lifted slightly. Tazir leaned forward. Why didn't you tell me? Again the foxes yipped in exchange. Moonbear waited until the din subsided. What difference would it make? Moonbear's news and his calm nonchalance shocked Tazir. What difference would it make? He pondered his own outburst. We're trapped in the forest. What difference would it make? Moonbear answered his own echoed question. None. The Baron already knows my title. It could only change the way you act toward me. I don't want that. Amused by the irony of their union, Tazir loosed a snorting laugh. A noble and a thief escaping together, he finished softly. What a disgrace. Moonbear's face folded into angry creases. Cullensburg's Baron is cruel, but that is no reason to condemn all royalty. You did not find me a disgrace when I fought the guards in Wynneth. Agarin's pompous followers. Tazir threw up his hands in disbelief. Moonbear, I meant me. I'm the disgrace. I'm a thief. Moonbear remained sullenly silent. Tazir's tirade gained volume. Are you stupid? Can't you understand? I take things. I'm not trying to mislead you. I owe you the truth. I steal. People pay me to take possessions from others. Moonbear relaxed. Good. Good. Tazir realized he was shouting and lowered his voice. Not good, Moonbear. I'm bad. He stared at the black expanse of sky, as uncomfortable as a parent explaining sex. I take things. Moonbear interrupted. From men who don't need them and give them to those who do. Anyone who does not make himself my enemy is my friend. If my friend needed something I had, I would give it to him. If I see my friend drowning, I pull him up. Things like this are normal, Shadow. Moonbear sat up straight with his back against a fallen log. It's not natural for too many animals to live in one place. The foxes fight for territory. When the forest fills with deer, many must die for lack of food. When too many people dwell crushed together like ants, they become violent. Cullensburg needs thieves like you to restore honesty and kindness. Tazir rammed his hands into his pockets. I can't believe you just used the words thief and honesty in the same sentence. Listen, Moonbear, I want to accept your admiration graciously, but my conscience won't let me. I don't steal because I'm nice. I do it for the money. Moonbear laced his fingers. He spoke accusingly, as if he had caught Tazir in a lie. I talked with Shylark. You give that money to people who need it. Tazir lowered his head and confessed. All right, I care little for the money, but I don't steal for loftier moral reasons either. I simply seek the thrill. He considered, trying to put the concept into words. I'm very much like that drunkard on the steps of Wynneth's Tavern, but my drink is a good challenge. Embarrassed by his own revelation, Tazir avoided Moonbear's gaze. So, my people hunt for food, yet some trade other chores for more time in the field. They find it exciting. Moonbear touched Tazir's foot reassuringly. They bring us dinner. Their motivations do not concern me. It's no disgrace to enjoy what you do. Tazir lay back down on his cleared patch of forest floor, contemplating his companion's words. Though far from the only home he knew, with no specific destination, and plagued by a vow of vengeance which filled him with restlessness, Tizir found Moonbear's comments soothing. I've misjudged him. He's not slow-witted, just naive. A city society would crush him, if in no other way I can pay him back for my life, by seeing to it that he returns to his people. Tizir watched Moonbear settle into a comfortable sleeping position. Moon, I'm sorry I didn't help you fight the guards on Wynneth. I guess I'm accustomed to avoiding those situations. Moonbear's voice was a sleepy mumble. You would have gotten in my way. You're not a warrior. Tizir bit his lower lip. In a way, I am. My father taught me the basic maneuvers. I wish I'd taken his lessons more seriously. Tizir recalled his feelings of inadequacy whenever he tried to swing a heavy blade, and the dull dissatisfaction which followed in his father's eyes, because Tizir would rather climb trees than hurl daggers into their trunks. If you'll sword train me, I'll show you how to ride a horse. Good. The swords I took from the guards will get used, Moonbear chuckled. I have never sat on a beast before. The towns outside our forest have ponies, but they are too small for anything except packs, and I have never seen any striped animal larger than a badger. Tizir smiled. The zebra steeds are just normal horses bred for color. The Baron thinks their hides blend better with the forest shadows, and the pattern prevents disputes about ownership. All of the ugly animals belong to his army. Moonbear whispered, Ugly animals for ugly warriors. Tizir smiled. He watched as exhaustion gradually overtook Moonbear, but for Tizir, sleep remained elusive. He slipped his hand into his pocket and stroked the smooth surfaces of Mordath's jadestone. Even those citizens with unbridled faith in gods do not believe the myths of magic beyond the Kattegat Sea. Yet Mordath's strangeness raised doubts. No trick of light and shadow could have caused the flash of the gemstone in Karl's tavern. What would make this stone so terrible? A man who believes himself a powerful sorcerer would wish to be free of it. Tizir had no answer, but he felt an overpowering compulsion to keep the jadestone. Its finely polished edges seemed to promise success, and reinforced his decision to head north with Moonbear. As Tizir hovered near sleep, his mind conjured the image of a woman. Wind pushed her short, blonde ringlets back from a beautiful face. Her blue eyes beckoned. Her mouth was soft with a laughter which filled Tizir's dreams. Tizir slept deeply, oblivious to the staccato yaps of hunting hounds, which gradually replaced the smooth, fluent music of the foxes. Chapter 7. The morning sun rose over the Kierwald, its beams reflected like emeralds from raindrops on the aspen leaves. In the forest south of Collinsburg, the woodsman, Erd Moore, stacked knots of rotten oak on the fire in his stone hearth. He placed each log with practiced care, knowing it would continue to smolder until his return that evening. Smoke billowed out from the blaze into the confines of his one-room cabin. A wolf spider raced frantically from a crack in the burning wood. Seeing no purpose in its death, Erd Moore leaned a stick against the log. The spider scampered down it and disappeared into the moss-chinked wall. Erd Moore kicked a twig into the fire. A second chance is a rare thing no one deserves. I hope you appreciate it. Wind ruffled the skin door of Erd Moore's cabin, admitting the sun in undulating bands. Light sheened from the off-white surface of the antlers which supported his bow and quiver. One from a red deer stag, the rack served as Erd Moore's only furniture except for his fur bedding by the fire and a rough wooden table. Disdainful of possessions he could not easily carry or replace, Erd Moore's wanderlust kept his furnishings simple and his social encounters brief. Stepping over the sword by his bedside, Erd Moore retrieved his bow. He stretched the quiver across his back and examined the bow for wear. Satisfied with its condition, he strung the weapon and slipped through the cabin door into the surrounding glade. A squirrel bolted from the clearing. It scrambled into a tree and watched Erd Moore in silence. Saplings bowed in unison. Their taller fathers stood firm, unswayed by the breezes which rattled through their branches. Erd Moore's buckskin hunting shirt absorbed the morning warmth. Bow in hand, he jogged across the meadow to the trail which led to the thickly forested hills to the south. Once on the path, Erd Moore slipped into the habitual stealth of a predator. He walked into the wind. He paused to observe and listen between steps. His senses sifted purposeful movement from the intermittent effects of the breezes. Behind him, he heard the sudden whir of a flushed grouse. Uncertain as to what had frightened the bird so close to his cabin, Erd Moore eased against the base of an uprooted tree. In the glade, the squirrel chattered excitedly, warning of a less than subtle intruder. Surely a man. No animal would move clumsily enough to upset it. Erdmore knew he possessed nothing in his cabin worth stealing. Unhurriedly, he worked his way beyond sight and sound of the clearing. He followed a stream bed to the far side of the meadow and positioned for a downwind approach. Beneath a tangle of blackberry bushes at the northern edge, he hunched in the gully, listening. A horse snorted and pawed the ground impatiently. Erdmore raked fingers through his close-cropped auburn hair. He retrieved a knife from the pocket of his buckskins, unsheathed it, and quietly and deliberately cleared a shooting path through the vines. An arrow pressed to his bow, he raised his head and peered into the clearing. The horse was a zebra steed tied to a tree trunk by the reins of its bridle, its gray and black barring unmistakable. Before the door to Erdmore's cabin, a man in black and red poked the hanging skin door. Erdmore snorted. Collinsburg guard! I should have guessed by his ineptness. The discovery revived memories of Erdmore's time served in the Baron's army. If we crashed through the forest with his lack of caution, the barbarians would have butchered us like cows. Erdmore knocked the arrow and aimed it through his cleared fire line. Turn slowly. The guard's muscles knotted beneath the linen of his coat. He whirled. His gaze flitted across the bush unfocused. His hand fell to his sword hilt. Who are you? Show yourself. Disgusted by the guard's recklessness, Erdmore remained still. You are in no position to make demands. The Collinsbergen's eyes swept the clearing, seeking the source of Erdmore's voice. Show yourself. I like to see the people I talk with. Very well. Erdmore stepped from the blackberries, holding his arrow in place with a finger looped over its shaft. But your enemies won't always grant you this courtesy. What do you want? I don't take well to uncoordinated children stumbling through my forest. The guardsman's face flushed scarlet with offense. I'm a soldier, trained to excellence by Captain Salik Kanathal. Then Salik has become an idiot. If he taught you properly, I wouldn't be standing here with an arrow pointed at your chest. Now, why have you come? The guardsman glared. Apparently finding further argument futile, he addressed Erdmore's question. I came seeking Erdmore, the bounty hunter. He shifted his hands from his hilt to a less threatening posture. Erdmore lowered his bow. You found me. The zebra steed tore at the ground with a hoof. The guard smiled weakly. The Baron wishes to hire you. Erdmore scratched through the curly, wiry hair of his beard. For whom? The soldier fidgeted. A couple of prisoners escaped from the dungeons a week ago. One's a local thief, a black-haired, blue-eyed, skinny little snake about this tall. He indicated a level just beneath Erdmore's chin. The Baron doesn't care in what condition you bring him in. He's only worth a fraction of your bounty. His companion... The guardsman reached his arm as far as it would stretch. Yellow-haired barbarian. He's fierce. Erdmore studied the guardsman's shadow-streaked face in the thin light of morning. How fierce. 6 of our men cornered him in Winnis Tavern. He left 4 dead and 2 injured. That's fierce, Erdmore considered. I don't work cheaply. The guardsman's mouth flicked into a smile, as if he found the statement particularly humorous. The Baron's ready to pay 4,000 gold weight for the barbarian and 1,000 for the thief, but you'll get no money if the barbarian's killed. The sum struck Erdmore momentarily speechless. A vision of his beloved Inge filled his mind. Her blonde cascade of hair danced in Norway's autumn breeze. A heavy bearskin robe disguised the graceful curves Erdmore knew so well. 5 years ago he had asked for her hand in marriage. Her father's reply still rumbled through his thoughts, sour as mocking laughter. My son is dragon rank and my uncle a jarl. My family is blessed. I will not wed my only daughter to an impoverished foreigner. Begone! I forbid you to see her again. And though Erdmore had spoken of love and escape, Inge dared not defy her father's decree. Now, in his familiar clearing in the Kilewald wilderness, Erdmore felt hope displace the bitterness his memory inspired. With 5,000 weight in gold, her father must accept me. But he also realized the Baron would not offer such a staggering reward for a simple quest. This barbarian bested an entire patrol, and the Baron expects me to bring him in alive. The soldier shrugged. You have to earn 5,000 weight of gold. Salik has a division of our army tracking them now. If you can deliver the prisoners directly to him, you'll still get your bounty. Erdmore plucked at his mustache, suspecting treachery. If I give the fugitives to Salik, what would keep him from claiming their capture? If I turn them over to the captain, I'll need many witnesses and some assurances. Tell your baron I'll take his offer, but if I deliver the barbarian to Salik, he'd best be carrying my bounty. I'll not have my payment delayed. De Collensbergen started toward his horse. He made a noncommittal gesture, indicating that Erdmore's request was beyond his authority to grant. Where are they now? The guardsman freed his zebra steed and snapped the reins over the horse's ears. In the Kylewald, probably not far northwest of Wynneth. Our army is close behind with hounds. We may not need you. Erdmore laughed. You'll need me. Crashing through the forest like a cattle herd, your men won't get within arrow shot of a barbarian. He watched the guardsman mount his oddly colored horse. Soldier. The guardsman reined his steed. Erdmore rubbed his weathered hand across his brow. Next time you or one of your fellows enters my glade, he'd best do so without disturbing the game. He raised his bow to remind the man how narrowly he had escaped death. Without replying, the guardsman rode into the forest. Erdmore walked to his cabin to retrieve his sword. It seemed strange to accept the mission of blood to regain the love he had lost so long ago in Norway. But, during his 10 years of warring against barbarians, killing and hunting men had become routine. After a decade steeped in blood and death, returning to the mundanity of Collensburg to brag about the war and its atrocities had seemed a farce. Instead, he traveled extensively, seeking a peace he found only by settling in the same woodlands which had served as the battlefield. Good hunting, he murmured to himself. Erdmore arrived in Wynneth near midday. He walked in silence, feeling conspicuous among open village roadways and pastures. Unlike Tazir, Erdmore found no security in the sight of Karl's neatly painted tavern with its copper railway. Approaching it, he tripped the latch and entered the common room. Dressed in buckskin from his coarse shirt to the boots on his feet and equipped with bow and sword, Erdmore seemed out of place among the Wynnethian farmers. Though aware of the presence of 3 other customers, he did not trouble himself to glance at them, but walked directly to the bar and took a seat. A pock-faced adolescent with wild, dark hair confronted him from the working side of the bar. Drink, sir? Erdmore pinched leaf mold from the lining of his empty pocket. No, not now. Is Karl in? 9 years had passed since Karl and Erdmore shared time in the Baron's army, but allies made in combat are not soon forgotten. The youngster shook his head. No, sir. Karl's out buying beer. Erdmore scowled. When will he return? Not until nightfall. Aware of the distance a barbarian could cover by evening, Erdmore tapped his fingers impatiently against the countertop. Did you see the fight last night? The youngster gnawed his thumbnail nervously. No, Karl worked alone. Do you recognize anyone who might have been here? Erdmore made a sweeping gesture encompassing every man in the room. The adolescent examined his patrons. He pointed to a table in the farthest corner. Just a Norseman, sir. Erdmore glanced in the indicated direction. A man sat alone, hunched over a glass of fine wine. His white blond hair fell to the small of his back, as well tended as a woman's. A closely cropped beard, masculinized features familiar to Erdmore. Mordath! Erdmore shook his head, shocked to find Inge's brother so far from his northern home. Thank you. Erdmore dismissed the barboy. He hesitated, uncertain whether he wished to speak with Mordath. He had never cared for Mordath's manner. The sorcerer had always acted blatantly scornful of Erdmore's presence around his sister, but as far as Erdmore knew, active hostilities had never arisen between them. The gods alone know what business he has in this part of the world, but I did come for information. I can weather his glares for the price of knowledge, and maybe he can tell me of Inge. With that thought, Erdmore strode to Mordath's table. Mordath stared into his drink with an intensity which Erdmore suspected was an act. The sorcerer waited until Erdmore sat across the table, then raised his head with regal disdain. He studied the woodsman in the crisp afternoon sunshine, his pale eyebrows arched in recognition, his mouth set in a grim line of interest. You. He stretched a long-nailed finger toward Erdmore's chest. You've come to me. Mordath's affections amused Erdmore. He smiled. Not intentionally. Wynneth is the last place I'd search for a sorcerer. What are you doing here? Mordath remained leaning forward, hands balled on the table before him. I came for you. For me? Brazenly, Erdmore chuckled. You could have waited in this tavern until Ragnarok. You know I live in the forest. So does anyone, you might have asked. Mordath's lips twitched upward. Ah, but you're here now, hunter. His palm curled back to the body of his wineglass. I knew the precise location of her hovel in the Kilewald. This past year, I gained the ability to track magically. He inclined his head to indicate the jade-tipped dragon staff. Meanwhile, I had dragon rank business to attend in town. Ardmore snorted. You always were a bad liar. The handful of people south of the Kattegat who have heard of the dragon rank or sorcerers believe in them only as beggars' tales. What business could you have in a farm town? Mordath's long fingernails clicked against his glass like wind-blown branches. That's none of your affair. I wish to meet with you for unrelated reasons. Aware of his advantage, Ardmore considered whether to bother dragging the information out of Mordath. The mage would come this far only from desperation. Apparently he needed Ardmore, and the dragon rank training, which required those studying the magical arts to spend 11 months of the year on the school's grounds, spawned sorcerers with no concept of social interaction. For all his self-important power, Mordath was as manipulable as a child. Mordath continued, obviously mistaking Ardmore's hesitation for acquiescence. For 2 years after you left Norway, I wasted my month vacations tracking you. Had I found you, I would have slain you. Ardmore shrugged unsympathetically. If you spent more time in the woods and less in class, you wouldn't have so much difficulty trailing me. He considered. You're neither the first nor last man to try to kill me, but why would you wish me dead? I don't anymore, Mordath explained. At the time, I hated you for what you did to my sister and my nephew. Surprise crushed down upon Ardmore, and he lost the urge to parry insults. There was a child? He fidgeted in the chair, suddenly uncomfortable. I didn't know. Is there anything I can do? Mordath lifted his glass to his lips and swallowed. Yes. He lowered his drink. That's why I'm here. You tainted Inge, spoiled her bloodline so none of our men would have her, save one. Which one? Ardmore whispered, unable to shake the sudden despair of his loss. His name is Brander. He's a pirate and a scoundrel who spends his days raping and plundering, then brings his concubines home to live with Inge. She's miserable. And the boy, 4 years old, and already as dirty and foul-mouthed as his mother's husband. Anger swept through Ardmore. Repeatedly, Mordath's fist clenched and loosed on the tabletop. I want you to kill Brander. Suspicious, Ardmore went cautious. Why come to me? Surely you have the power to slay him dragon rank, and even Norway must have assassins for hire. Mordath took a great gulp of air and loosed it in a sigh of blatant exasperation. Brander is a soldier. For me to kill him would require magic. Dragon rank mages are rare, even in Norway. Every citizen of Narvik would know I murdered him, and I've no wish to become a fugitive. As to your other foolish statement, Ardmore, I spend 11 months of every year on the dragon rank grounds, where there is no contact with visitors. What would I know of finding or hiring assassins? I came to you because you love Inge. It's a fair trade, I think. Brander's life for Inge's happiness. Ardmore frowned, too familiar with northern culture to believe Inge's father would reconsider the advances of a foreigner even after Brander's death. And once I've slain Brander, you'll help me marry Inge? Mordath shrugged. I won't oppose you, but I can't speak for my father. He has a strong will. He would rather see Inge with a man like Brander than living in poverty with a forester. Realizing that 5,000 weight in gold could barter better than words, Ardmore returned to his initial purpose. I'll consider your offer, but I've another job to finish first. I need information. Did you witness the odd goings-on here last night? Some, replied Mordath. I left before the battle. No matter. Ardmore leaned across the table. I just need some idea of direction. He met Mordath's emerald green stare. Did the barbarian or his scrawny companion say anything about destination? Barbarian. Mordath massaged his knuckles through his beard. Do you mean the Northman? He was no barbarian. He spoke little, but when he did, he used your tongue fluently, and his accent was Swedish. His eyes crinkled in thought. Of course, Sweden does have barbarians. No relation to your Danwaldians, I don't believe. Ardmore's brow knitted with interest. North, then. Calmer Point? Calmer Port is the only city I know with transport ships which cross the Kattegat. He looked to the Norse mage for confirmation, but Mordath seemed suddenly agitated. Mordath's feline eyes went deadly direct. North, he repeated, his earlier composure broken. You think they're headed north. It was a statement, not a question. Alert to Mordath's sudden change in temperament, Ardmore replied, You as much as told me so. Tribal bonds would draw a barbarian home. Mordath caught the edge of the table, nodding agreement. But I didn't know he was a barbarian until now. I will help you find them. No, said Ardmore. His tone was soft, but his hostility unmistakable. I work alone, I don't make errors, and I become one of Karana's Dans before I die for someone else's blunder. No. Mordath paused, apparently confused. Are you stupid? I'm dragon rank. Have you forgotten my tracking spell? With a little effort and will, I could tell you the barbarian's exact location. Ardmore scowled, recognizing the value of Mordath's power, yet unwilling to sacrifice his solitude. Mordath's arrogance and social incompetence might cause him more difficulties than his magic could solve. What stake do you have in my manhunt? Mordath's aura of contempt returned. He seized his staff and flicked it around so its clawed end rested on the tabletop. I'm seeking a jadestone like this one. The thief stole it from me. Apparently thinking Ardmore feared for his bounty, Mordath continued. It's worth a scant handful of silver. Your reward, there lies, and anything else they might carry, belongs to you. Koshin goaded Ardmore to question further. If you wanted the jadestone back, why don't you track it, transport yourself, and retrieve it? Why do you need me? Mordath hesitated, as if weighing his alternatives. I can't locate the gem, nor the person who carries it. The best I can do is find the Swede, and hope the little weasel is with him. He folded his arms across his chest, his eyes narrowed. The magics of transport and murder would weaken my life energy. If my killing spells missed either target, I would be forced to fight, draining further power. Mordath shrugged. He continued with glaring honesty. You're a soldier. Why should I risk having to battle with the barbarian? One question still plagued Ardmore. If you knew the thief took your gem, why didn't you get it back before they left town? Impatience grated through Mordath's answer. I mistook them for local peasantry, a small-time pickpocket and a Swede who chose to live in the forest. The jadestone is of no use to me. I came to Collinsburg to rid myself of it. He clapped his palms to his chin in disgust. Had I known they headed north, he broke off. What's so special about this gem? Mordath waved off Ardmore's question. I don't wish to speak of it. But you will, Ardmore pressed. I don't perform any task without all the knowledge available. Mordath said nothing. Ardmore shrugged. Very well. When I find the thief and retrieve your gemstone, I'll seek out another dragon rank mage to explain its value. Amusement crossed Mordath's features. You're bluffing, Ardmore. You'll never find a dragon rank. Tiring of the game, Ardmore stood. I'll find one, even if I have to go to the front gate of the dragon rank scroll to do it. Good day, Mordath. Wait. Mordath's word was a menacing command. Ardmore raised his eyebrows to indicate interest. There's nothing about the gem you need to know. Mordath tapped the jade in his staff. The rank stones serve as an indication of experience and a means to store power. Each stone is designed to hold a maximum of all its wielder's stamina, his life aura as we call it. The stolen jade contains nearly all the magic, thus the life force, of another mage. If I destroyed it, I would instantly kill its owner, an action forbidden to me by dragon rank law. So why did you wish to be rid of it? Asked Ardmore. And now that you are, why do you want it back? Mordath scowled with scornful impatience. We're wasting time. Ardmore sat down again. Then finish quickly. Time is of less importance than information. I'm not leaving until you've answered my questions. You're the one delaying this mission with useless conversation. Mordath's demeanor went hard as flint. His hands gripped the sides of the chair, as he fought a private battle between addressing Ardmore's statement and storming from the tavern. At length, need won out over pride. He settled back into his chair and continued. This spell, which holds the other source for his life aura, also draws magic into the jadestone. The gem weakens any other dragon rank who carries it. I came to find you, but I hoped I could lose the cursed power-stealing stone in Collinsburg's den of bandits. Now you tell me the thief is headed directly for the owner of the Jade Stone, the one person who could reclaim its powers. Ardmore pondered Mordath's words. The story seemed too strange to be a lie. Mordath's reticence appeared logical. He is probably not fully free to disclose the dragon rank teachings, and he might well fear it would double-cross him and sell the gem to its owner. Aware the Jade rank dragon mage whose essence occupied the stone could become his most difficult rival, Ardmore realized he needed a sorcerer's aid. Yet, still disliking ties and loyalties, he agreed with reluctance. All right, Mordath, we work together, but I make all the decisions. Mordath nodded his acceptance, and Ardmore pressed forward for a whispered conference. The sun arched over the Kylewald and began its gradual descent. It peeked through breaks and tears in a woven interlay of branches. Collinsburg's patrol of 20 mounted cavalry and 30 foot soldiers reclined, savoring the final remnants of their midday meal. Set apart from the others, Illyrian sat beside Captain Salik Knuthel. The guardsmen ate in contented silence. The Prime Minister plotted. Salik's too honest for bribery, and not quite stupid enough to control. Illyrian gnawed a handful of smoked venison. If we haul the barbarian prince back to Collinsburg alive, Baron Dietrich will become a wealthy man. We're just hirelings performing our duties. We'll see none of that gold. Illyrian lost interest in his food. He set the meal aside. The Baron can't afford to let the barbarian escape. Not only would he lose vast sums in ransom, he would risk the wrath of the entire tribe. Once their prince came safely back among them, the barbarians could attack the barony. By the desperation of his bounty and the intensity of our hunt, Baron Dietrich must fear his men could lose such a battle. The thought made Illyrian grin. I have a third option, the most pleasing of all. Somehow, I must see to it the barbarian prince is slain by Collinsburgan warriors in the Baron's name. That would assure a war. Illyrian smiled, considering the results of his decision. The citizens of Collinsburg are still bitter over the last barbarian war. Their sons and husbands died for no gains in gold, power, or territory. With the proper motivation, the Collinsburg citizenry could be swayed to oust their baron. And, while barbarians and Collinsburgans kill one another, I will haul away the barbarians' gold and become the richest man in the realm. Who could better replace Baron Dietrich than the wealthy Prime Minister who was brave enough to lead his soldiers into battle? Wicked joy suffused Illyrian. So far, the Shadow Climber, the Baron, and Collinsburg's former Supreme Commander had played into his hands like pawns on a chessboard. The escape had been unforeseen, but it too might work to Illyrian's advantage. He recalled the careful, patient planning which had brought him to his current position, the forged reports which led to Captain Tazir's hanging, the well-paid messenger who'd implicated the captain, then conveniently died after the trial from a self-inflicted drug overdose, the brilliant revelation which brought the Shadow Climber to justice and confirmed Illyrian as Prime Minister. There remained only one last step. I must gain control of the army, force their hand against the Baron, and take his position myself. Suddenly, light flared in the center of Illyrian's and Salik's camp. Both men leaped to their feet. The captain's sword rasped from its sheath. The radiance stained his steel blade in a series of blacks and greens. Stunned beyond action, Illyrian stared as the sorceries faded and a man appeared in the dispersing glow. His hair hung in a neatly tended blonde cascade. His long, slender fingers grabbed a staff, its end tapered to a huge black-nailed claw which clutched a faceted milky green stone. The mage indicated Salik with his free hand. Sheathe your weapon. If I wished to kill you, I would have done so already. Salik obeyed with obvious reluctance. His fist remained poised near his hilt. Apparently satisfied, the sorcerer continued. I am Mordath, dragon rank of Jade Claw. I have come to aid your task. Illyrian stared, not quite willing to accept the reality of dragon rank legends, yet struck by an entrance too grand to deny. More accustomed to verbal diplomacy than Salik, Illyrian recovered his tongue more quickly. We are honored by your presence. Salik added, Indeed, we would find your help invaluable. Unfortunately, we've no money to pay. Illyrian winced, wishing Salik would leave politics and negotiations to him. Mordath pursed his lips with calm indulgence. I don't want your gold. I'm working for another, though our purposes are the same. Accustomed to his own use of betrayal and treachery, Illyrian grew suspicious. He phrased his query delicately. The value of your skills is unquestionable. What can we do to make your task easier? Illyrian waited, certain the sorcerer's reply would reveal his true motive. Mordath smiled, perhaps reading Illyrian's intention through the cautious construction of his question. My, employer will divert the men you seek toward Hawk Rock. He said you would know where that is. He studied Illyrian and Salic as if seeking confirmation. Illyrian nodded, pleased at this opportunity to capture a moonbear, yet concerned that the presence of Mordath and his partner might impede his plan to slay the barbarian. We know of it. Should we pull into hounds and head toward Hawk Rock? Mordath replied with emphatic swiftness, No. You must continue your chase, and more quickly now. Drive the barbarian and the thief toward the Colding Hills without rest. Make them careless. Otherwise, Erdmore will never find them. Erdmore! Illyrian's exclamation was startled from him. The name jarred a scene from memory. Illyrian stood on the wide street before the Baron's castle, his thoughts warm with the impending success of his treacherous intrigues against Captain Tazir Madakin. You! Erdmore's voice ground through Illyrian's reverie, heavy with threat. Erdmore? Illyrian's reply was a quiet monotone, free of guilt. Cautious as a cat, he turned, shocked to discover the bowman stood within arm's length. Illyrian took a startled step back. Erdmore's face crinkled with fury, his eyes went dark and unforgiving. I know what you did, you lying, stinking, half-damned vulture, and you're going to confess to the Baron. He lunged, quick as a striking cobra. Illyrian loosed a small scream of surprise. He flung up an arm to protect his face. Erdmore's fist smashed into his nose, drawing blood. Illyrian lurched away. A second blow thudded into his cheek, sending his consciousness swimming. From the periphery of his vision, he saw the off-duty guards rushing toward them from the field grounds. He fended off Erdmore's third strike, then caught the bowman's wrist. Erdmore twisted, and both men crashed to the street. Enmeshed in memory, Illyrian recalled how the flat of Erdmore's hand battered his skull. Illyrian's forehead struck the road. Head ringing, he writhed free. Blood dripped to the street. He spun toward Erdmore. The bowman's fingers skittered forward and locked on Illyrian's throat. He dragged the nobleman to his feet. Admit it, you bastard, Erdmore hissed. You invented those charges against Taz. His nails gouged Illyrian's neck. Say it. Oblivious to the presence of Mordack and Salic, Illyrian followed the painful progression of images in his mind. He recalled how the soldiers arrived to give him aid, even as Erdmore faced a gasped confession. I invented those charges against Taz. Erdmore's fingers dug deeper. You bribed the messenger to mislead Taz. Illyrian stared at Erdmore through a ragged veil of darkness. Sweat doused his body, and he knew real fear. I did, he panted, his breath a thin whistle. Then suddenly the guardsmen came to his rescue. 3 pulled Erdmore, flailing and cursing from Illyrian. A 4th supported the nobleman's sagging form. You're all right now. Illyrian rubbed at his bruised throat. He passed a hand across his face, and his palm was suddenly streaked with red. The task of dragging Erdmore to the castle required 6 men. Illyrian heard the bowman's righteous screams. You traitors, let me go. He betrayed our captain. You heard him. He admitted it. His anger cries faded into the distance. One of the soldiers cleared his throat. Will you press charges? Illyrian shook his head, not wishing the matter to go to trial. Though the guardsman would testify that his confession was obtained under duress, he had no wish to allow Erdmore's knowledge to halt Captain Tazir's execution, nor bring Illyrian's innocence into question. No, he served with Taz a long time. It's hard to accept deceit from a commander who was also a friend. Erdmore needed someone else to blame. For whatever reason, he chose me. He smeared blood from his palm to his sleeve. For my own safety, I would ask that you keep Erdmore locked up until after the captain's trial. Now, standing in camp in the Kylewald forest, Illyrian realized he did not wish to face Erdmore again. Erdmore too must die, and Illyrian knew he would need Mordath's cooperation to accomplish such a feat. Without the sorcerer's assistance, the woodsman would prove too powerful an opponent. These thoughts flashed through Illyrian's mind within seconds. Memory broke to reality. Salic and Mordath stared at Illyrian with questioning intensity. Unnerved by their scrutiny, he sought words to explain his heated repetition of Erdmore's name. He met Mordath's gaze. Forgive me, is Ardmore your friend? He waited, aware success or failure of his desires might rest upon Mordath's answer. By Thor, no. We're just men with a common goal. Mordath thumped the steel-tipped base of his dragonstaff into the dirt to punctuate his reply. But if you know something important about Ardmore, speak it. A note of hostility and uncertainty in Mordath's voice sparked a thrill from Illyrian. He played this new advantage. I'm surprised a man with your talents would weather the company of one so deceitful. Do you trust him? Trust. Mordath went pensive. I have abilities beyond your understanding, but I judge character as any other man. Braced against his staff, he leaned toward Illyrian. What do you know about Ardmore? Illyrian suppressed a smile, aware he had won Mordath's attention. We served together in the barbarian wars. With practiced ease, Illyrian spouted lies. Ardmore would find excuses to remain at camp or in the barracks while we fought battles or attended watches. On our return, we would notice things missing, a few silvers, a trinket. Illyrian shrugged. We never proved anything, of course, but I saw him steal jewelry from the dead, ours as well as the enemy. The few times we plundered villages, he was quick to rape, sometimes boys as well as those dirty barbarian women. For effect, Illyrian concluded with a description of himself, which he had once overheard his father say to Illyrian's eldest brother. For a handful of gold ducats, the man would slaughter his mother. The falsehood slipped from his tongue as glibly as truth. Mordath's eyes glimmered. He turned his gaze to Salik. Is this true? Illyrian held his breath. As second in command, Salik had led a different regiment in the barbarian wars, and could have had few dealings with the bounty hunter. Salik's thin face puckered in a grimace. His reply was brusque. I don't know, but it wouldn't surprise me. Ardmore undermines my authority and badmouths my men. He shrugged. The Baron seems certain he could track the prisoners. It's not my place to argue. Illyrian realized Salik had known about Ardmore's hiring and bit back an oath. He had worked and cheated his way to his position as Prime Minister, yet he was unaware of this important decision. He quelled rising resentment with effort. For now, Salik's silence would pass unpunished. The attainment of Mordath's goodwill precluded irritation. As the three men talked, the speech of the guardsmen in the surrounding camps intensified, from exchanges snatched between bites of meat to the steady hum of conversation. In their growing impatience, some of the men began sparring. The crash of swords punctuated their voices. Forgive me, Salik said to Mordath. You suggested we move quickly. I'll rally my men. And I assume you'll need a horse, Lord Dragonrank. He waited until the sorcerer answered with a nod, then trotted toward his troops. Mordath lowered himself to the ground. Ardmore also asked that you have his bounty with you at Hawk Rock. Illyrian stared, fighting the urge to laugh. Does Ardmore expect an army patrol to bring enough extra horses to carry 5,000 weight in gold? Illyrian sat across from Mordath, immediately thinking of a means to capitalize on the mage's apparent ignorance. I know this is none of my affair, but how much of this bounty has Ardmore offered you? Mordath drew his knees to his chest. I'll get none of it. I've too much power to concern myself with money. Illyrian nodded agreeably. Although, he studied Mordath's face for clues to his disposition. Even a master magician would have uses for a half share of 5,000 weight in gold. Mordath's eyes went wide with curiosity. 5,000. That's the bounty. Mordath stroked the smooth edge of his dragonstaff, saying nothing. Afraid to lose Mordath's attention, Illyrian continued. Of course, if I could claim the reward, I would share it with you. But in fact, I know a means to attain enough gold to make the bounty seem a mere pittance. Interested? Mordath frowned. Perhaps. Explain. With delicate care, Illyrian wove his web of deceit. He described the barbarians' vast wealth and Moonbear's importance to his tribe and the barony. He concluded with the necessity for Moonbear's, Tazir's, and Ardmore's deaths. Then, while Mordath calmly considered his options, Illyrian waited in a strained silence. Graceful as a house cat, Mordath rose. Can you promise me one more murder? A Norse pirate by the name of Brander. Illyrian smiled. Easily arranged. I'm interested, Mordath said.